Hi there. I just want to talk about AI today because AI is becoming a very big part of our lives. And most of us don't seem to have wrapped our heads around it. It's very complicated. But in essence, AI at the moment can do a lot of things that we can do and some things that we can't do either. This is great. This is great for progress. A lot of automated tasks, a lot of manual and cognitive tasks will be automated away by AI, which makes them easier to do, quicker to do, much cheaper to do, and will kind of definitely grow the GDP of any country or the balance sheet of any company that uses it effectively. But there's also a downside to that because all those benefits, the cheaper, the easier, the quicker, also mean that human beings who are being replaced by the AI will be replaced at a very quick rate. Because if you are the CEO of any company that could increase its returns on investment by using AI, you would be a fool not to do it, because if you didn't, they would kick you out and get somebody else who would. So definitely any company that can benefit from AI will try to use it, and that may result and already has resulted in a lot of job losses. People are losing jobs, people are being given less work, so shorter shifts for those who work in shifts, or much shorter contracts or whatever the case, because whatever function they performed can now be performed by AI. And this isn't limited to manual menial jobs like packing things in a factory. It's spreading all around. Like if you think about 10, 20 years ago, the kinds of jobs that were still kind of accessible, some kinds of jobs are completely gone now. Like typist, that doesn't really exist anymore. It wasn't so long ago that you could make a decent living just typing documents with text to speech to text and all those kinds of AI improvements, as well as just general software and tech improvements. That kind of job category has vanished, and there's a million other categories that are continually vanishing. Now, where does that leave those people? They only have two options. They either reskill and find a new job, or they suffer the consequences of not being able to sustain their existence, basically. Which kind of brings into question a more philosophical kind of thought about this progress, what we're calling progress. In South Africa, the right to life is guaranteed by the Constitution. The right to life, which means your existence is guaranteed by the Constitution. And it is the government's job to make sure that you can enjoy that right. What does that really mean if that right is brokered by money, and money is sort of obtained by working mostly, unless you own capital, in which case it's obtained by putting your capital to work. But that's a small percentage of the population. Most of us have to work for our money. And we kind of value human beings according to work. Not just work, but what kind of work they're capable of doing. And that, to me, seems like a contradiction in terms between the value of life being sacred, if you want, or inherent in every human being. And also, but at the same time, we say, well, your value is tied to how much you can increase the GDP by, or how much you can increase the balance sheet by, how much you can bring into the company. That, in a way, determines the quality, not just the quality of life, sometimes even how long you live. In a lot of countries, if you don't have enough money, you're more likely to die sooner than people who do, because of access to healthcare, decent food, decent shelter, and those kinds of things. So if we are truly saying that we value life and that life, the right to life is inherent in every human being, then we perhaps need a different system to value this life, because valuing life by work seems to be a contradiction to that. And this will be made worse, of course, when AI progresses, which it will, to take away not just blue collar jobs, which it's kind of in the process of doing now, but even very cognitive jobs. For example, actuarial scientists. They're very clever people and they've studied it very hard and they know a lot of things and they can do a lot of things. But a lot of what they do can be done by AI, or at least part of it. And this is AI now today can already do the work of, a junior actuarial scientist. And the way AI or technology in general progresses, it's quite exponential, which means where it would take a human being 10 years to learn something, AI could learn it in a much shorter time, like less than a year. So it's very possible, and it's probably already doable that you could replace a good chunk of actuarial scientists with good AI that does better risk calculations, that does better forecasting, matches premiums to, does risk on a broad scale and on an individual scale much better, and sort of can match your premium to your risk much better, instead of just sort of applying the blanket risk for people in your category. With the use of your data, your habits, your behavior, it can probably much better predict, whatever you're insuring against, predict the likelihood of that happening. So they go actuarial scientists, which means they will look for analyst jobs and displace the analysts. Except the AI is coming for those jobs too. And before the end of the decade, half of the people are either out of work or having to do jobs that they're way overqualified for, but way underpaid for. And again, where's the value of human life in that? Because we're heading towards a situation where we significantly reduce the quality of life of people and even the length of life of people just because they can't produce enough. Now, the answer to this is perhaps more political than technological, because as a society, what we value is encoded by the law and by our policies. Those are the things that encode what we value as a society. So if we decide that we value the life of a human being over the work that they can do, then we have to convince the politicians to put in place regulations that guarantee that life, that guarantee your existence and a decent quality of life. And where will the money come from, I hear you say? Well, if we think about it, what AI is doing now is basically automating. And automating is essentially the process of taking income away from labor producing people and giving it to capital owning people. Because the people who own the AI will use the AI to generate more money and so forth. And that's a small percentage of the population, which means the larger percentage, you and me, the labor people, are kind of left behind. And this trend has been ongoing for the past few decades. The last time something like this happened was perhaps around the 1800s, when in England, they invented the steam engine. In that scenario, wages were stagnant for about 9 decades, 90 years. And in this scenario, it's a much worse thing, because unlike the steam engine, which kind of had a limited range of applications, AI can pretty much in 10, 20 years replace most of the functions that we're performing today. So we'd have to find new ways to assign value to what people do, or just new ways to assign value to people. Because if we keep playing the game of it's linked to what you do, your value as a human being is linked to what you do, the end result of that game is that if anyone or anything can do what you do better, then your value is diminished automatically by definition. So we need to really, perhaps as a society, think about whether valuing human life by the work that they can do, by how much they can contribute to GDP, is not contradictory to the right to life.